Hi guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. Bugsy Malone has already been out for a walk today. I went out for a walk with her and I tried to do this video, the video I'm about to do, which is looking through the fan advisory board meeting minutes that took place last week. The minutes came out last night. Shout out to Johnny from Twitter, Johnny H3232 for sending them over to me. Lots of really interesting stuff. It's a long read. Well, not that long, but it's fairly long. So I'm going to, for the purposes of trying to keep the video as short as possible, I'm going to skim through the irrelevant bits and get to the interesting tidbits and the things that we can take away from it, the things we already knew and the things maybe we didn't. And also, of course, give you my takes on where I see issues or value. What is interesting is a lot of the things that I've been speaking to you about with regarding naming rights deals, and sometimes it's better to just keep the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium because the indirect and the intangible benefits and revenue streams that are generatable, if that's even a word, from not selling your naming rights to another brand, but keeping it your own. They mention this. So I feel a little bit relieved that they are thinking in the same vein that I am. Before we get into it, guys, as you always do, please hit the like button for me on the video if you don't mind it. If you enjoy the content, hit the subscribe button on the video. If you haven't already, join the just about 17,700 Tottenham fans that have gone before. Welcome back to them. Welcome to the new. If that is you, also hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topic. And whilst I am here, quick shameless plug for Shameless Football. Henry Wright from Henry Wright TV and myself have decided to go and do a joint venture on a new channel called Shameless Football. We're going to keep doing our own things. Spurs Talk Show and Henry Wright TV are going to stay separate, but we want to talk about broader football topics, the financial side, predictions, what's going on in clubs around Europe, what's going on in clubs in the Premier League, etc., Champions League, watch-alongs to come, all that kind of fun stuff, Europa League, Conference League. And so you can find that on Shameless Football. Me personally, I'll be doing lots of dog walks where I can talk about other things outside of the things that directly relate to Tottenham. For example, the Everton takeover from 777 Partners. It's an absolutely fascinating story, and it may just transform the short-term and the medium-term situation over at Everton. But you know what? It doesn't have anything to do with Tottenham specifically, so it would be really irrelevant putting it on to the Spurs Talk Show channel. So that's why, one of the reasons why we started Shameless Football. It's going to be a lot of fun. We really appreciate your support. The link for that is in the title, or if not, it's in the description below. So any support you can give me would be very, very appreciated. Right, let's get into this, guys. So the Tuesday, the 5th of September was the day of the FAB's meeting at the boardroom at Lily White House. All the supporter representatives were there, the people that won their allocation earlier on in the summer. The club representatives were Daniel Levy, obviously the chairman, Donna Maria Cullen, executive director, Katie Reed, who is the director of legal, Levi Harris, head of supporter engagement, Luke Clark, also an associate legal counsel, Matthew Colcott, who is the operations and financial director, and Todd Klein is the chief commercial officer. It's interesting that I don't know if you absolutely have to have lawyers present at these sorts of things, but it's interesting that Tottenham have two. I think you usually find at least one just to keep yourself out of trouble, saying things you shouldn't be saying. Anyway, we'll get through all this stuff here. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. The first thing that they was outlined was the club's strategic objectives, off-pitch performance and plans. And this was first part was held by Donna Maria Cullen. She began by outlining the foundations and principles of the club's operations, which is that first team football is the core of the club's ecosystem, that they pay attention to detail to deliver the big vision as evidenced in the details within the stadium. My first issue with this, Donna, is the attention to detail in the architecture was fantastic. The attention to detail in getting a drink at half-time or a sandwich left a little bit to be desired. I think we've got more bars than Iron Appa, but it's impossible to wait until the end of the first half, leave, go to the background, go to any particular bar, get a drink, drink it, get your sandwich or whatever, eat it, and get back for the start of the second half. There's a lot of work that needs to be done with regards the efficiencies of, I don't know. I mean, they've got those like bottom pour beers and all that stuff. It just doesn't work. It's a frustrating affair. Everybody absolutely hates it. And you end up missing 10, 15% of the game if you want something to eat or drink at half time, because you either have to leave early and get back in time, or you wait until the game's over and then you and then you miss the start of the second half. So there's massive issues to be there. So when they say they pay attention to detail, not in everything. They also say they create opportunities that change lives and fulfill potential, be that young academy players, staff, and community project participants. Look, I do think that, you know, it's very important. As a Tottenham fan, you might think that these are distractions, but you have to remember when it comes to the bigger picture around Tottenham, and I know people that dislike Daniel Levy and Joe Lewis, they think that it's all about property and it's all about making money, and maybe to an extent that is the kind of ultimate end goal. But there are consequences to having that goal, and they come in the form of responsibilities. Tottenham would never have got permission to build the stadium that we now have, which is essential to creating success on the pitch. If we still were operating in the White Hart Lane Stadium, we would never be able to grow and afford the sorts of inflationary pressures that are happening, not just within the cost structure of the input cost of Tottenham Hotspur putting on events, but also the far higher pressures of inflation within football, transfer fees that are caused by something called demand push inflation. Cost pull inflation is the reason why prices are going up for things like beers and tickets when the cost of putting on the event goes up because of inflation in the economy. Demand pull is what's happening in the price of football players because of things like Saudi Arabia, things like multi-club ownership models, things like Abu Dhabi and the PIF fund and Newcastle and all those things. So the two different versions of inflation. The worst scenario is when both of them are happening at the same time. And anyway, to a degree, Tottenham do need to participate in that model, and the consequences of that are we needed a new stadium. The consequences of that are that there are responsibilities. We needed to redevelop under the Northumberland redevelopment plan. We needed to participate in all these different things like community housing. Every time we build a block of flats or a block of apartments, some not insignificant slice, I think maybe 30 to 40% of those apartments go to community housing, social housing. Obviously, there's more jobs available in the community in the hotels or in the cinema or in the whatever. More schools, more shops. All of those things are benefit. Like there are pressures around that, but there's also a lot of benefits to the local environment, and that shouldn't be overlooked or dismissed as all part of a grand plan to make money. Whether or not that might be true, they are byproduct benefits of a system and should be celebrated to the point in which they are helping people that wouldn't have it otherwise. They're also trying to build an ecosystem that delivers extraordinary experiences. They create a more sustainable tomorrow through our commitment to heritage and community. All that stuff. I mean, I don't know. To me, it seems a little bit kind of airy-fairy, but it is what it is. Not only that, but Donna Maria Cullen then shared an internal manifesto that was created for staff earlier this year. I'm not even going to read it out. You can see it on the screen. To me, this sort of thing is, every time I've ever worked in an organization that is large enough where they would have something like this, they always read similar to this, and it always makes me cringe a little bit because it's just words that don't really mean much to me. And I think this is also fairly embarrassing, if I'm honest, but it is what it is. Some people love this sort of stuff and gobble it up. I find it something to, I don't know, roll my eyes at. Daniel Levy then outlined the club's key objectives, which is to deliver revenues to fund a sustainable, successful football clubs consistently competing at the top level. Key word there is sustainable. We're not talking about sustainable as in being green. We're talking about self-sufficient. We're talking about living within their means. You may not like it that Daniel Levy and Joe Lewis do not want to put money in and take money out of their pocket to keep the club running, which is something you're seeing at other clubs we are competing with, like Chelsea, and obviously in the past, the Manchester City Football Group, and a bunch of others. Abramovich was another perfect example. But I believe, and it is my belief, you don't have to share it, that any business should be self-sustainable. If you are living a credit card or that sort of lifestyle, whether you're an individual, whether you're a government, whether you're a charity, or whether you are a business, then it doesn't end well. At some point, you need to make sure that the ends meet. And Tottenham are trying their best to do that whilst also dealing with cost push and demand pull inflation that is created from people who are our competitors that have a never-ending source of wealth. It's a very difficult juggling act and plate spinning concept, but I think that Daniel Levy and Joe Lewis, or Daniel Levy specifically within the ENIC ecosystem, is trying their best to do it, and to a large enough extent have remained relatively competitive, although obviously without the the final kind of trophy to celebrate as frequently as people would like. He says that football is at the heart of everything the club does and is the club's key driving focus. The club is self-sustaining, as I've just mentioned, competing in the most competitive league in the world. The strategy to date has been to invest in the playing squads, build a new training centre, and increase stadium capacity. The focus now is to optimize those investments, both tangible and intangible, and drive revenues that enable the club to reinvest in players and create a winning club. So it looks like they have finished or coming towards the end of the build phase of getting the ecosystem, the infrastructure of the club to be better. And now, finally, we are turning our attention to getting everything right within the finer details and how to kind of get that blood from a stone, get to a point where the juice was always worth the squeeze. And I think that I've mentioned this before in conversations with Dave, Irish Hotspur, where I think that getting to the Champions League final ahead of expectations was possibly the worst thing that could have happened to Tottenham because of the reset of expectations that the fans had, because the club wasn't ready. We had a nice new stadium and we had a nice new training ground, but we weren't ready with everything else. That Paratici was brought in to make everything else happen and to get everything better. He identified a whole host of problems that weren't fixed by Steve Hitchen in terms of the right amount of people to do the right amount of lever pulling, the quality, the correct approach towards youth players. And obviously there was a lot of misspend in player acquisitions as well during that period and maybe the year or two after. And so we weren't ready, I don't think, for that kind of leap up in expectations that then followed. And obviously when you hit those dizzy heights and they're unsustainable in the short term, gravity takes hold. And then you have the situation that followed with Tottenham, which was a little bit of a mess. But I think we're getting through that now. And they're saying that that is also now the focus within the football club, is also to have moved towards a system that now gets that money, takes hold of the build phase, and now gets the juice, start the squeeze, and then move to a place where we can continue to reinvest in players and create a winning club. I'm not going to bother too much with this bit here, but he says specifically improve on-pitch performance with investment in first team scouting and recruitment. We know about this. We've got this new model with Gabbanini and Paratici maybe working from the outside, with Scott Munn coming in. There's a data-based model that is emerging, and hopefully that is starting to yield fruits. We are starting to see us make those investments in the long-term future. People like Ash Phillips, people like Veliz, people like Voskovic. We've also seeing some of these young players we bought a year or two ago and lent them out, like Pape Sarr and Destiny Udogie, come in and are having massive impact on the pitch right now. The future looks bright. The future is lily white. We spoke about this last week, and I think that sort of thing is starting to yield some fruit. We're still trying to develop new and diverse revenue streams to further fund investment in the football and decrease reliance on football revenue, such as that we protect the long-term sustainability of the club. This is the point I was making regarding the NFL and the Formula One track and the Skywalk. As much as people think that, you know, being thought of now as not a football club, we're an entertainment complex. And as much as that eats away at some people, I think that is a sacrifice that I personally am willing to make in the hope that we can divest the responsibility of funding the ever-inflated football fees on transfers and wages purely on the heads of Tottenham Hotspur fans, by diversifying and finding ways to accumulate revenues from Beyonce fans or rugby fans or boxing fans or NFL fans, all the while increasing the branding by having the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium rather than the Google Arena or the Mercedes-Benz Arena. All of those things help to divest the responsibility away from Tottenham Hotspur fans. That doesn't mean that Tottenham Hotspur fans no longer have to pay for those people that are going to shout back and say, well, why raise the prices? I've already explained my personal belief and why that is justified. I know that's disagreeable to many of you, but that is the way that I see a Tottenham Hotspur can compete whilst remaining sustainable and yet still trying our best to outperform the likes of Chelsea, the likes of Newcastle United, and all those sorts of teams that are trying to do it via a different means. We haven't yet got this perfect database scouting model that Brighton seem to have figured out, and Brentford to a lesser extent, but we're getting there and we're making improvements in that vein. And so I'm starting to believe that there is a plan. It maybe was a little bit opaque for a long time, but actually the plan now is starting to come through, and I'm on board with it personally. Let me know your thoughts if you are or you're not. Upgrade our facilities and operations through continued innovation and lead the way in delivering exceptional player and fan experiences. Be digital first and data-led to enhance fan engagement. We've already talked about data when it comes to player acquisitions, data-led when it comes to fan engagement. This is just, I think, buzzwords, digital first. We're all digital first. We have been for a long time. The tickets, knowing where you are, what you're doing, what you like, how much beer you drink, or how much food you eat, all of that stuff will probably come. They'll probably have membership cards that you'll get a discount if you swipe your card before you buy your 2 pints of whatever, at the stadium, or you buy your sausage rolls, and all that stuff will probably come like a loyalty system, but not sort of thing like you get at Tesco's. I'm sure that stuff's coming. I'm surprised it's not there already, but higher fan engagement is the kind of the excuse, or the kind of the rationale, but in reality it's about the more they know about you, the more they can get from you in terms of further spend. So let's not be naive to that. We revitalize our neighborhood, something the club has made significant progress on delivering homes, schools, and jobs. I've already spoken about this. The responsibility and the requirement in order to build the stadium is to make sure that Tottenham itself is redeveloped as best it can. Gentrification is a divisive topic. Some people think it's just a way for the rich to get richer and the poor to get pushed out. I don't believe that that's a fair argument. I think there is some truth to it, obviously, in the long scheme, but it's never black nor white. It's a shade of grey. Your particular shade will depend on where you see on these things. But like I say, when it comes to building these homes where they will make money, they also have to give away or hand over a not insignificant percentage of them to social housing, which helps lift up, the people around them, get them into nicer environments, and get more people home that otherwise couldn't afford it. So it's not one or the other. It's a little bit of both, but depending on your personal stance towards gentrification, I understand if you see it in a certain lens. No problem there. I'm not going to bother with this virtuous cycle thing. That looks like a Venn diagram. It's a marketing nonsense. I hate all that waffle. So we're going to skip straight past that. Interesting, quickly on the finance director outlined the club's financial performance, noting the amount of player spend. Let's just quickly look at this. That they're saying that we have spent over the last 6 years since the stadium was brought in, £847.5 million in player trading, player sales, and we've liquidated about £250 million, give or take, with a net spend of £605 million. So our net spend is around £100 million a season, which is, believe it or not, about 25% of our best year's revenues ever. And that's not best year's profits, that's best year's revenue. So 25% per year, give or take. Even though over the last 8-9 years there's going to be variety, I think 400 million is around the average revenues we've received over the last 6 years. So about 25%. Sorry, over the last 6 years. So about 25% of our revenues is spent every single year on buying new players. Most of them go wrong. Most of them have been wrong. Let's be honest, right? How until very recently, how many of our biggest spenders have been success stories? We'll talk about that. We'll configure that stuff out maybe on a live stream this week before the Arsenal game. Let's quick move on, though. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Daniel Levy summarised that significant investment has been made building for the future, both on and off the pitch. Club revenues were only those that the club operations generated. So, important note here, okay? Club revenues were only those that the club operations generated. So, this narrative of the buildings of the flats and the apartments and all that stuff, as I've said to you many times, that stuff is off books. It's not funded by Tottenham, and the money is not given back to Tottenham yet. I don't know if it ever will be, but those things, they fund them, like the money that's generated from selling the first phase of apartments gets put back into a fund that then builds the second phase of apartments, the hotels, all of that stuff. Nothing from Tottenham is going to support that, and nothing from that is coming back in to support Tottenham, as far as I can tell yet. And I've never seen anything to the contrary on any of the accounts that I've looked at. What I would say on that regard is that, as I said before, those things, they have to have been built. And the only negative, or the negatives that you could throw at Daniel Levy about this, is if you've got money for that, even though they had to do it for the Northumberland development, in not all of it, but most of it had to be done. If you've got money for that, then you could have put money into the club. You could have put your hand in your pockets. You chose not to. I personally don't disagree with that, because I think football clubs should be self-sustaining. I understand it if you don't agree with that when you look at other clubs that don't necessarily use that particular model. But for me personally, I believe that you should be self-sustaining. But in reality, the money for those for those cinemas and all that stuff doesn't come from the club, and the money from it doesn't get back into the club, as far as I can tell yet. Interesting. Financial fair play needed to be properly enforced to be effective, and the focus now was on optimizing revenues and ensuring that the club's funding strategy is long-term and sustainable. The club is doing everything possible to maximize revenue to go back into the first team. Interesting. We'll see. We shall see. TK outlined the commercial department's focus. The commercial department was working to optimize investment to date and to accelerate the growth of the club via three key sponsorships. Three key areas: sponsorship, retail, membership. Via three key areas: sponsorship, retail, and membership. The former included stadium and in-market opportunities. Stadium opportunities relating to optimizing ticket exchange, increasing conferences and events, premium upgrades, visitor attractions, catering, and third-party events. In-market included summer tours, global football development, and partnerships. Accelerated growth opportunities were sponsorship, retail, and membership. Fan base. Remember, all of that commercial department stuff also includes all of the things that are categorized, like the NFL, the stadium, concerts, all of that stuff. All those rental fees, all of that stuff will get put into the commercial under the banner of conferences and events. Premium upgrades, visual attractions, blah, 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 blah. That's all the other stuff that we know about as well. DMC, Donna Maria Cullen underlined the club's commitment to the neighborhood in Tottenham since 2011. We talked about the benefits to the club here. They've created more than 4,000 jobs for local people. A local academy of excellence in Tottenham, a supermarket, a gym, 400 new homes with planning permission for a further 1559 with a new hotel and arts district in planning. Again, all of this stuff, as far as I'm aware, does not get put back into the club yet. Maybe at the very end when the project is complete, it will then get transferred. But I believe that the money that is made from that operation in the profitability, it gets recycled back into the next phase of the project. This is the part I wanted to get to. Lastly, guys, questions from the members. One of the board members asked the board if they saw the Saudi League as a threat. Daniel Levy explained that the money available for players from the Saudi League made it a competitor, though the Premier League is better positioned than other leagues in that respect. Someone else explained that the key considerations in the short term is transfer market inflation, which is what I've been talking about. That is the demand pull inflation of Saudi Arabia. The FAB discussed the unique nature and rich history of match-going fans in English football, giving the Premier League a distinct advantage over the Saudi League. So they're not seeing the Saudi League themselves as a threat, more of it just pushes up the price of the players, which again means that we have to find ways as a football club to be able to pay for those things. And again, we should be supportive of this idea of doing as much with that stadium as we possibly can so that we do not end up having to always ask the Tottenham fans to pay for it. But that doesn't mean that Tottenham fans stop paying. It just means that we can find other ways to help other people pay as well. You know, it's like if you've got a limp, you know, you're still going to have a limp regardless, but you'd like someone on your other side to kind of take the weight off a little bit because it helps, but you still doesn't mean your injury's gone away. You're still going to be paying as a Tottenham fan, but you just hopefully we can compete without having to put all of the pressure on Tottenham fans all the time. RM, another FAB member, asked how the club plans to make existing fans feel valued and keep families attending games, urging the board to reverse the ticket price rise. RM felt that it was important that attending matches was affordable. She added that traditionally families enjoyed affordable tickets for home cup games at least, but this season there was a real possibility there would be no such games. Daniel Levy confirmed that the club wanted to minimize the impact of rising costs on fans, exactly what I've been trying to explain to you. Ticket prices have been discussed at the prior meeting. Daniel Levy explained everything was a balance when operating a business. 100%, you've got to try and divorce your emotions from it if possible here, guys. Donna Maria Cullen confirmed that a full ticketing review was in hand and that the FAB would be included in discussions going forward. I personally would be surprised if they actually unwound it, but you never know. As I say, I've explained in length my particular position on this, which I know is disagreeable to the vast majority of you, but I come at it from a different viewpoint. PP asked whether the lack of cup games will impact next summer's transfer activity. Daniel Levy explained that everything is interlinked, whether it's match days, commercial partners, or visitor attractions. Everything impacts the club's ability to spend on the first teams, which is why we have to drive extra revenues. So yeah, but I'd be, you know, how much money would you have made from the cup games? Well, you make more money from putting the games on at home in beer sales, etc., than you ever do from winning the cup. SC asked, what does success look like for the club and how is it measured? Daniel Levy explained that this changes over time, but the most important thing for the club is to be a highly competitive team that wins and, importantly, entertain fans. How much the club would lose by not hosting one Carabao Cup match? MC said it was difficult to quantify as receipts were shared with Gates varied. DL explained that with no European fixtures this season, more women's first team fixtures could be held at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So we're trying to find a way to kind of fill the gap. But for sure, you have to remember, right? I think there's a £1 million or so is made per home game in revenues. And so if you're missing out on at least 2 or 3 of those from European, or at least 3 from European games and also cup games, then Tottenham will probably take at least a £20 million revenue hit, I would imagine, this year from not playing those games, just in match day concessions, food, drink, ticket prices, etc., which is 5%, at least 5%, right? Maybe, so it could be even more than that. So it's not an insignificant amount of money. It really isn't. SW was asked what success was like for the women's team. The women's team actually loses money right now. Where is it? It currently loses a lot of money. It's a way of engaging a new fan base, and the club was committed to the women's game 100%, right? Sometimes you have to see the wood for the trees, take a short-term loss, short-term pain for long-term gain. The women's game is obviously going to be massive, and it's growing wildly every year. So it's important that we see, keep their eye on the prize with that one. It's important to engage with it, and hopefully that eventually the money will come in. We'll start to balance the books on it as an expense versus a liability versus an asset. HP asked if there was an update on stadium naming rights. So this would have a significant impact on income, and fans would hope could alleviate ticket price increases. This again is what I've been talking about with you guys over the last week or so. TK explained that naming rights deals are complicated, and we only have one opportunity to name the stadium. Getting the term, fee, and brand partner with are all correct, are difficult. HP asked if a deal could be done in the foreseeable future. Daniel Levy explained that as well as identifying the right brand, the sector the brand operates in is important. Finding a brand and sector that matches the club's values is vital. There is a trade-off with the club's own brand. I've been trying to explain this to you guys. Where the value of the exposure of brand Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in different markets draws in other revenue and benefits. Super important. How much money does it bring in immediately? Difficult to know. How much does it bring in future? Latent conversions, more fans becoming aware of Tottenham Hotspur. Difficult to quantify. But as I mentioned before, allegedly, Tottenham Hotspur are the fastest growing supported team in America. I reckon that is in no small part because of the NFL. JT asked whether there will be an NFL franchise in London, as this seemed a logical step. DL agreed this was a logical step, but explained that it's not in the club's control. PP said long-term, the hotel development is going to be great, but asked how is it going to affect the clubs financially in the short term. DL explained that there are different operating models that can be used and that the financials were being looked at in tandem. Right, so it's not clear. As I said to you before, it's not clear right now whether that money is going to get put back in, how it's going to get put back in at the moment, but at some point it hopefully will. I don't really think there's anything more to go on. This is all just kind of addendum stuff. So, guys, to me, look, I don't know if there's too much in there that's interesting or exciting to you, but I personally see it as an interesting event, an interesting communication. Some difficult questions were asked around the fan ticket prices, and the answers were pretty clear that they're reviewing situations. I think that, to me, this thing keeps talking to me. I think that, to me, I'm not surprised by any of the answers. I was expecting them to kind of communicate about the naming rights being, like I say, that there's a trade-off, and it's not that particularly easy to figure these things out, what the best outcome is, until there's a number that is so, insanely high that it makes it a no-brainer to accept the deal. But there's always something you're giving up if you're getting something in return. It's interesting to see how much money Tottenham have spent on players. According to them, they were quite open with that over the last, because I don't think that information has been quite so explicitly kind of laid out and easy to break down over the last 6 accounts. But I think there's £600 million, £650 million net spend, £100 million a year going into players, which is about 25%, give or take, of the average revenue over the last six years, including COVID years as well. It is a lot, right? And then plus 40% or 45%, I think it is, of Tottenham's revenues are taken up by player wages. So what does that look like? 70% of Tottenham's money is going on, give or take, is going on average, has been going on to player trading and player and staff salaries, which is not that far away from the limits of what you're allowed with FFP. Not that we're close. I don't think we're very close to it, but you can see when you add those things up, you know, on average, we can't be miles away, and you know, that's something to obviously keep an eye on in the future as well. Just thought I'd read it through with you guys. Sorry if I've been too quick, but that's best I can do for today. We'll go through some more in the future. Let me know your thoughts, though. Are you impressed with the FAB? I thought there's a bit more information in there than they would normally give away, but actually, at the end of the day, they're not really allowed to give information to you know, out in that environment that isn't publicly available if it's that meaningful and that can move markets and things. So we will leave it there, though, guys. And I'll speak to you about this on another one. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, bye-bye.